Hey guys, welcome to another voiceover tutorial. My name is Sakumi-chan, and for this voiceover tutorial we'll be looking at we'll be talking about how to improve as an artist, tips and tricks, and what you should do, and some stuff from my personal experience. But since I didn't just want to talk about it without doing anything visual, I decided to take one of my older pieces back in 2004, 2000. I'm not really sure which date this image was from, because it was taken from my photo bucket from a long time ago, and sadly they do not date the uploading date, so I have no idea when it was uploaded, but I have a feeling it's from 2004 or to 2006, somewhere in between. So that is fairly early example of how my digital art used to look like, and trust me, it used to look much worse. Let me show you guys an example. But I thought so yeah, it used to look somewhat like this. I think this is one of the more earlier ones that I've done, but this one's probably a little bit, maybe a few months after this, or a year after this. But yeah, I thought I used this as an example just to show you guys, hey, you know, I just didn't, even back then I was doing kind of like this sexy thing, but obviously, as you can tell, not too much anatomy structure going on here. I mean, a little bit, but not too much. But anyways, I wanted to take this and then do an update version of how I would draw it now. So this character in particular was actually one of my OCs, but she I don't really go back to her that at all nowadays. Anyways, so usually what I would do now is I would do a sketch of it. Let's just go ahead and use the solid round brush, and we'll do a quick sketch of this character. So yeah, I believe back then I used to use quite a bit of programs before I started using Photoshop, just because you know, I tried Photoshop a little, but for some reason I didn't really take to it too much. I found it a little bit not as user-friendly, you would say, and there was other programs out there such as OpenCanvas, mainly OpenCanvas, you know, because OpenCanvas back then was pretty popular with artists like myself who were just starting out, because it's so user-friendly. Nowadays OpenCanvas just looks like a copy of Photoshop. But yeah, back then I used to use that, and I believe this I actually did not use OpenCanvas to do. I also experimented with another program called Painter by Corel. Now that program is pretty, I find not that user-friendly, surprisingly, because you know, it had so many functions. It really tried to imitate like real life traditional painting, such as oil painting, water painting, etc. So as you can see, right here I'm missing a bit of that hip bone that I usually like to I paint more curvy girls nowadays compared to then. But yeah, I'm just kind of sketching out the silhouette, maybe relaxing her pose a little too. Really gotta emphasize on that hip, because I clearly have changed my taste in the ladies that I paint. Also back then I didn't really know too much about anatomy, and that was before I kind of sketched a lot of those anatomical sketches on my way to school, work, etc. So I basically didn't have too much practice, but that's another thing about improving as an artist. You have to put work into it. I would definitely recommend at least 30 minutes of drawing, sketching, whatever you can manage in your busy schedule. If you don't have that much time to commit. So that's what I think would be at pretty much the minimum that you could do towards improving. Definitely quite important. Based on my own experience, I pretty much drew most of the day at least. Back then, probably at least 5 hours per day. Safe to say 3 hours, because some days I would have to do homework and whatnot. But you know, I was quite addicted to drawing, to the point that I have a callus formed on my index finger from pressing onto the pen. It's kind of, my fingers got pretty deformed over there. However, you can't just be drawing blindly, because the best way to improve is to use reference. If you do not have a teacher to guide you, reference is the next best thing. And also recommend purchasing some sort of anatomical book if you can, because that will definitely help. In my experience, I always had an anatomy book with me everywhere I went, whether that's on the bus or on the train. I had like 3 hours transit time. I always sketch 3 hours on the train or bus. If I'm not sleeping, I'll be sketching. So that is also a great way to make use of your transit time, and plus it trains your balance as well. You know how hard it is to draw on a moving vehicle. Well, if you can do that, I feel like it could probably help with the steadiness of your hand. But anyways, here we are. We have our basic sketch of our character. I totally forgot her name. Always start out with a sketch, no matter what. No matter if I'm gonna use line art as a base or if I'm going to do a full-on painting, I always use line art as a guide. I just find it being very, very useful in helping you marking those landmarks and kind of expressing your idea in a very, very fast manner than to the color phase. So the face, obviously I'm not gonna spend too much time on it. But yeah, that is the character. Oh man, I haven't seen her in so long, but as you can see, she's probably quite skinny over here. I feel like I was trying to make her sexy, but I just didn't know how to because of my limited knowledge back then. So that's why the more you draw a certain thing, the more you'll get better at it. Nowadays I'm drawing a lot of those curvy girls, so now I'm more used to drawing curvy girls. Back then actually, funny story is I started out drawing a lot of female characters. Of course it wasn't nothing NSFW or anything because I had no idea about that, but I would draw like Cardcaptor Sakura, like the old school anime stuff, Sailor Moon, and most of them were girls. And one day I decided to challenge myself, and that is way back when I was still like 12 or 13. Drawing guys was quite difficult for me. Like literally does not look like a dude at all. So ever since then I had a phase where I drew only male characters because I felt like I suck at drawing male characters, so I'm gonna draw male characters until it looks like male characters. So I think I spent actually a few years drawing male characters only, and just sometimes female characters. Anyways, now what we're gonna do is I'm not sure if we should start with line art or just straight to color. Let's go with a bit of line art, since over here back then I was very much a line art artist, because first I tried out without line art and you know it was pretty difficult for me, so I decided to switch to just using line art, as like everybody else that was using line art. At least the artist I was hanging around with let me just make this canvas a lot bigger because I feel like I will need this to be just a tad bigger. So we got our canvas here all nice and large. And I'm just gonna do very slight liner action. So yeah, I used to draw quite a bit of dudes because I wasn't good at drawing dudes, and I believe that is another point. If you're not good at drawing something, if you're, still have time, definitely challenge yourself to only draw that subject for a reasonable set amount of time. I kind of took it too far. I was drawing it for like 1 to 2 years, but definitely doesn't need to be that long, as long as you continuously kind of draw it until you feel like you're getting somewhere. You feel like it's looking like what you want it to look like. For me, that was not drawing a guy that looked like a girl. So that was my pointer to when I could start drawing girls again. After my dudes looked like dudes, I started drawing girls again. And yeah, that's my story. And another thing about improving as an artist is pretty much you have to it's good to have a surrounding of other artists to motivate you. The reason I say that is because I was pretty much by myself in high school. Not a lot of people was into drawing. I mean, there's maybe like 3 people in our entire school. My school was quite small. It was high school at this time. I think we had around 300 students, and maybe only 3 or 4 was into manga, and then I was pretty much the only one that was kind of into drawing at that. So I was pretty much alone in that aspect. Not really that many peers that I hung out with that had my interests. So I mean, I would still sketch by myself and stuff, but definitely compared to when I entered college, when I was in college with other artists, I was in 3D animation, and everybody had a common interest of art. I think that was one of my turning points, where I met all these people, all these colleagues that were into the same thing I was, and we were mutually motivating each other, challenging each other to draw. That's another thing I want to kind of point out, is that if you get into a program, don't just depend on the program to make you what you want to be, because what's gonna make you what you want to be is yourself. So many artists that was in my class probably had quite a bit of potential, but some of them just did not felt too pressured by the program. Yes, it's quite hard to be in an art program with a lot of training, a lot of homework, and some of them just could not deal with that. As with any college program, there's a risk that you might not like it. There's a risk that you feel the work is too much. You know what I mean? So everybody have their reason, but some of them just did not put in the work, and in the end they did not graduate from, at least not from the program that I was in. So that just goes to show you, the course does not make you what you are, or make you like a great artist that's ready to go into the industry. It's you. And oftentimes, if you do not put in the work, if you do not work on your off time, have a great portfolio, you won't be able to get a job right off college, and that's saying something. And something, don't take this too hard, but my teacher always tells me, if you don't find a job after this program or college, you gotta go to university, because pretty much most people, I guess, I wouldn't say most, but there are certain people that do go to university because they're not able to find a job, an art related job. And that's why they have to go to university for that extra experience, or they chose to go there because they have not found a job. Usually with art related industry, concept artist, illustrator, whatever you can think of that is related to visual style, even 3D animation, character modeling, any of that, if you don't manage to get a job right off the bat after college, then it's quite difficult. But that doesn't mean that all is lost. You can go to university, do your personal projects, get your portfolio nice and shiny, and then apply for the job then. But as I've said, don't take it too personally. Everybody's experience is different, and that is just what my teacher have told us pretty much while we were still in the program. But yeah, anyways, just did that liner real fast. Kind of left out the face. Should probably do a quick face here. Back then, my faces were a lot more anime inspired. Of course, because I came from a pretty an anime background. I used to draw all these Sailor Moon characters, and then it was Cardcaptor Sakura. Funny enough, I also experimented with Copic marker, more traditional form of drawing, and I did that for a year or two as well. So yeah, you can definitely experiment with different media, and you know, sometimes you might not be good with some media, and then years later you go back to that same media, and then you'll be like, oh hey, it's actually pretty good, and you're sticking with that media. So it was like that with me and Photoshop. It was pretty much I was not good with Photoshop when I first started, and after a few years of experimenting around with other stuff, I went back to Photoshop, and you know what, it was the best thing after that. So yeah, definitely do not give up if you're not completely good with one media. Just experiment with other stuff, come back after, and then try it again. Okay, so we have our Nico girl here, a cat girl. As you can see, she has, I would say, this is probably like a really skinny version now. She had a bit more curves to her. Okay, so another thing I like to do, especially when I'm sketching, this is not part of the demo, but I like to kind of flip it around to just make sure that everything is nice and evened out, nothing weird going on. So if you flip it and take a good look and see if you messed up somewhere where you made one arm longer or larger than the other arm, or if something feels off. For me, I would like to round off her shoulder a little bit. Also, another one of my weaknesses was drawing faces. Faces was something I had so much trouble with, and still continue to have trouble with nowadays. But back then, my troubles were different than it is now. But yeah, I had to do this a lot more often, flipping of the canvas a lot more often, because I did not know what to do. So I was pretty much drawing the dark back then, experimenting quite a bit. And that's another good tip, is just to experiment as much as you can. And that is a reasonable way to discover new ways of doing things, and maybe even your unique way of doing things. That is also a good way to define your style. Experiment, discover different rendering techniques, different editing tools, etc. And you know, with a combination of these, you can kind of come up with your own little thing that you're known for, and just keep drawing and developing that one thing that kind of catches your eye. For me, I think my style started to really hone. I guess when I first started to really hone in my style was when I drew that Princess Mononoke piece. And then from that point on, I was like, wow, people really like it. And yes, I know I determine my style based on my fan base and what they like. So yes, I'm a people pleaser artist, or some people call me a sellout artist, but what the heck, I do enjoy drawing stuff that people like. So, and also what appeals to me. But yeah, that is a way for me to tell how to direct my style, pretty much based on public perception and based on what my fans find interesting. And that's just my way of doing things. Some artists don't really care about that, but pleasing others, pleasing my fans or myself is something I use to determine how I push forward with my style, in addition to stuff that I really like. So it's not just, oh, I want to please my fans. It's, I want to please my fans. At the same time, I want to see which style I like as well. So definitely you can also kind of determine or figure out a style that pleases you and your fans. And that is also a good way to build fan base. Building a fan base, doing things that your fans want to see, building that fan base that way. Let me see, I think this is step 3. Gotta make another group for that. So now we are all done with our liner, it's all filled in, ready to go for coloring. Yep, so these steps I'm not really explaining too much on it, since I've always done this in most of my tutorial, but basically just fill it in with whatever color you like. I usually like to use a pretty neutral gray to start with, and then after I go ahead and do the skin tone and everything. So let's just use the skin tone I used back then and see what we can do with it. We got the face. Let's quickly use the lasso tool to outline the corset or jumpsuit of this character. Let's go with the color that is already provided. Honestly, I'm definitely not feeling this design. I don't know, I don't think I was very aware of my designs back then. It just wasn't as it's not that good. I think my aesthetic back then was quite quite funny to me nowadays. But then again, let's see if we can make it work. So using the lasso tool, quickly select the sections that I want to color in. Put that hair color right in there. So yeah, just like that. And she had fishnet stockings. Not very. I'll just start off with a quick blackout of the stocking color, and then also the waist, the belt area, which is this color. And there we go, we have our basic color combo for her. Okay, Fox Girl. Let's call her Fox Girl. I don't really have a name for her. So now, let's move on to step 4. And let's continue talking about improving as an artist. Definitely allocate a time for yourself to be able to practice, and always practice. I always tell this to those of you that are just starting out. Always allow yourself reference to practice with, because then you will have a guide there to help you out, at least. Okay, and of course, surrounding yourself with peers help you improve much faster. If you're the type that gets motivated by other artists, that is really great for you. And you have to allow yourself to be working with other artists as well, not to feel threatened or insecure or above them. Kind of just enjoy their presence. Kind of share your passions and get motivated from what they like and what you like. Oh, trust me, I've seen plenty of times where other artists wasn't exactly happy about being surrounded by other artists. So yeah, you have to allow yourself to be open, to be kind of like a team player, I would say, because the art industry, you oftentimes work with other people, so you have to be able to do that. Anyways, what I'm doing now is lassoing the hair areas, because I'm going to be kind of shading it a little bit, or even adding shadow to it using the airbrush tool. Just kind of airbrush a bit of that shadow underneath the hair to pop those bangs out, and to isolate and to tell the viewer there's shadow there. And here too, kind of just outlining in sections. Okay, and I'm going to just give a little bit of shadow to the arm, not too much, enough to tell the viewer there is shadow, there's dimension. And this is to say the body in front of the arm is casting shadow upon the arm because it is in front. That is another way for you to think about things when you shade stuff, is if the object itself is overlapping something or in front of something, there will be shadow occurring there. And I'm gonna drop down shadow underneath her neck, onto her chest a little, because her head is casting shadow on her chest, and the lighting most likely is coming from above somewhere, so yep. And you can also do this with hair. I'm not really selecting hair 100%. I just want to select it in a way to say that the hair is casting a shadow on top of the face, and so forth. So the bangs on top of the head hair, and also the ear, put a bit of shadow there, and the crotch too, have a bit of shadow underneath, and the hips area, a bit of shadow there. Of course here too, especially because the other leg is overlapping the front leg, so gotta put that shadow there. Last but not least, this leg here, just put a soft shadow there just to kind of define the form a little bit, and then this side too. So as you've noticed, I've been using that airbrush, however it does not look overly airbrush, and that is because I have lines to kind of keep that sharpness going on. And also I'm using the lasso tool to define that, those sharpness too. So lasso tool plus line art plus airbrush works in my books, because you can't have too much airbrush at the same time too much sharpness, so compensate one thing for the others. Use the lasso tool to keep the sharpness, while you use airbrush to still dish out the softness. So yeah, just a bit of definition in there. As you can see, it's definitely looking more 3D. However, it still doesn't, I guess in a way, doesn't have any soul to it yet, because there isn't any reflecting light or anything like that. So right now we are purely working on for giving the character a 3D form. Just kind of shading it all around. I think I will kind of work on the eyes now. Let's kind of graze a... Oh, I forgot that this layer is actually a multiply layer, which means it adds on shadow on top of whatever layer that's underneath, which is the basic layer, which I constrain the shadow layer to. Constrain by holding Alt, click. So when you constrain, it's the same thing as not coloring outside of whatever you constrain your layer to. So I constrain my layer to the base color. Everything else I constrain to that layer will not go outside of that layer. And that is a very, very useful way to kind of work on a painting. I think I'm pretty sure, oh, her eye color is blue, okay. Just making sure, because I think back then I went a little too ham with the eyes, so it's very, very busy, and if you zoom out, it's very unclear. Back then I had no idea about like looking at previews, like small previews, and determining if everything looked good. Another tip to improving, always use a small previews. That way, when you are working on your piece, you look back to the small preview, you can it's easier to tell when something's working when you look at it from afar, as in look at it from a smaller preview. That way you can get a gist of what it looks like in general, and that always helps. Okay, now what we're gonna do is we're going to introduce some very, very intense highlight. This way it adds that extra oomph to the piece, and this is something I do nowadays more than I did back then. Like back then I had no idea about this. I was just kind of blindly doing things, but now I feel like I might be onto something. So right now what I'm doing using the lasso tool is selecting a bunch of areas where I think the highlight would end up. So something like that. Now this is purely just a rough guide. So what I did is select it, and then I went here, brightness contrast, and I kind of brightened it up, this area. Now as you can see, this has kind of oofed up the shadow and highlight area, and that compared to this already you can see that back then I feel like I was trying to go for that, like with the highlight here. However, I had no concept of like intense highlight or realistic shading, so all I did was I knew what it was, but I was not able to put it effectively onto my piece. So now I learned that we can do it this way, and to be honest, I probably wouldn't have figured this out without experimenting a lot with my piece, because a lot of the times I don't really look at other artists' stuff. I look at photographs or images on Google that is not artist drawn. And a lot of the times I try to take inspiration from real life photos, and that's why you could probably tell that a lot of my stuff is painted in a realistic manner, despite the fact that my anatomy is not completely realistic. And that is something that I aim for. Okay guys, okay, we got our highlight in place. What I'm gonna do is slowly decrease the opacity of the lines, and that's how usually I would get rid of my lines, is just slowly kind of fade it away, opacity, decreasing the opacity bit by bit. And at the same time we have to put back those lines using shadows and form. So bit by bit I decrease the lines and I paint over it, kind of like this. So now I'm using a bit of that, a bit of the shadow that I created, and then just kind of using my eyedrop tool, picking up the colors, putting it down, and etc. Just doing this, kind of defining the muscle, the lighting, using a solid round brush, pretty much. And that's something that I didn't do back then. What I did back then was pretty much, we have the lines, go in, fill out the lines, color it, and that's it, without really thinking about lighting or anything like that. And that's something that I believe you can learn by just drawing a lot, experimenting a lot, kind of using a photo reference as well. If your goal is to paint a bit more realistic, the best suggestion I can make is to use photo reference to help you with that. If not, you know, use a bit of photo reference, but maintain a bit of your own style. If more stylized art is your goal, a bit more cartoony, then can't really make too much suggestion about that, because my own goal is not that. However, I feel like if that is your goal, then perhaps referencing some very well known cartoon artists or very good cartoon artists would help quite a bit, without copying their style, of course, just to see how they do things, you know. And you know, imitation is not that bad if you use it to learn stuff without completely imitating the artists themselves. Anyways, just kind of went in with it and kind of just painting a little bit more, because I did miss some area. I only covered a little bit of the area with that quick shadow trick with the lasso tool and the airbrush. Now I'm going in with the solid round brush to define my character further, and need to put more shadow as well. Another thing to improve as an artist, at least for me, because I'm aiming for semi-realistic, something that helped me was to push myself using shadow and highlight. As you can tell here, I was quite shy with using shadow too much, or at least too much shadow or too much highlight. So everything seems a little washed out, a little bit even. Now I encourage you guys that improving, a good way to improve, just go outside of your comfort zone of not using a lot of contrast in your work, and just use contrast in your work and see how that goes. And you know what, if it's too much, you can tone it down, no problem. Okay, let me just fix that shading there. And then the arm. So now what I'm gonna do with the arm is I'm gonna use a bit of blue tone, and I'm gonna lightly graze it in with the airbrush very softly, because the environment right now is a little bit on the cold side. A white background is usually defined as a cool background. A cool background usually reflects blue light, so that is the reason for the blue, the subtle blue color. But of course, this is my choice and how I like to shade things. You do not have to use a blue shadow highlight. Shadow highlight meaning the color, a lighter color that you use inside your shadow to highlight it. I'm pretty sure I'm using the wrong term, but that's how I describe it as. You could use any color actually. Depending on the background, if your background is pink, your shadow highlight would be pink. Definitely experiment with it a lot, and that is also another tip, which I think I overstress quite a bit. Just to experiment, pretty much. Let's see how this would look if I made this whole part like bright. You can also experiment with this type of stuff. So I made the whole chest bright. Obviously I need to kind of bring back some of that shadow. Maybe here. There we go. I want to make the chest brighter because if you zoom out, this actually looks like an interesting lighting, and I kind of dig that. So I'll probably stick with this. Once you are happy, so this before, after, once you are happy with it, you can merge it down to your color layer. And I'm going to just darken this up because I feel like it's a bit too bright, too washed out. So just lowering the contrast a bit, increase the shadow, and after that I want to put back a bit of that skin tone back in this area, which I lightened up. So I'm just going to use the airbrush to bring back softly, bring back some of that skin tone to the whole piece. And also here too, I think I'm just kind of experimenting here. I would like to experiment putting highlight in this area right here to see if it works, and I think it works. Using the lasso tool to maintain the shape while using the airbrush to softly blend everything together. And gonna use the solid round brush now. I decreased the softness, so now I'm using solid round brush to kind of define it a little, like that. Once I'm done, deselect and going in to blur it out with the smudge tool, and this tool is really good. So smudge tool, if you have it on scatter, it acts as a very powerful blur tool which allows you to blend the colors together, such as this. So it's always helpful to have that on hand in case you want to kind of blend something really fast, just to see. Usually I like to use the most effective method to paint out the base at least, and then after that, if I feel like this needs work, I go in using the solid round brush and do it manually, very detailed. So now we're just gonna go ahead and let's take a look at how I did it. So there's lines in this design. We'll add the lines after, but for now what I'm gonna do is trying to texturize the clothing by adding dimension to it, by kind of shading parts of it as if it is somewhat of a thick fabric. And also another thing you could do with clothing, especially for tight clothing, for categorized as tight sexy clothing on girls, on female characters, usually I like to make that squish factor happen. It's pretty much when I make the chest area a little bit dented because of the, I don't know if that's the right word to say, but a little bit squished up because of the corset or whatever they are wearing. Oftentimes, for me at least, you guys know I draw like underwear stuff. No denying it. Just squish that up, put a bit of shadow there, and then blend it in using the smudge tool. And after that, I gotta fix certain parts of it. Fix that. I'll squish that part. I'm going to add a little bit of a shadow over here, just because I want to make it feel like it's being squished. And of course, probably need a bit of highlight over here. There we go. Now it feels a little better. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and work on the neck. And I like to do this by selecting the part that I'm gonna go in to work on, which is the neck, and don't want to be worried about stuff getting painted outside of that area. So using the lasso tool to block that out, and then quickly go in to effectively painting what I want to paint out. So yeah, using the lasso tool is very effective for this reason. Fast and clean. Fast and clean. Gonna use a bit of blue, graze it outside. There we go. And gonna select this part right here. I would like to darken this part a bit. Then blur that out. So as you can see, it's starting to look a little more 3D, a little bit more realistic. So yeah, I'm trying to think of other ways, other stuff to talk about that has to do with improving as an artist. Let me just go ahead and kind of put back some of that shadow for the corset. Don't want it to be too bright. I would like the skin to be the standout in terms of brightness compared to the rest of her, compared to her clothing. I don't want her clothing to be too bright. Okay, so now that we have that, what you can do is once again auto contrast. Auto contrast is pretty good. Sometimes it auto contrast is too much. If it gets a bit too much, you can fade auto contrast. Let's take off a bit of that intensity like that, but it's left with a fairly nice amount of contrast, and that's something that I never did back then either. I never used to care about contrast. My brain worked as if I just need to put down like my perception of shadow and highlight, which was not that realistic, and that was it, without thinking about how light will react, how different bodies would react under the light. Nothing of that sort. I guess now my brain works a little harder because I'm constantly thinking about all those stuff. Back then it was just, oh, I just need to put this detail and that's it. And I'm sure some of you understand what I'm saying. It's kind of, it sounds a little crazy. Anyways, as well, I'm gonna put the shadow with the ear casting shadow on the hair, and that's something that I would not think of back then, like cat ears casting highlight on the hair. What's that? But now that I think of it, I gotta put those highlight where they belong, and those shadow. And that's trying to think of other ways. Yes, always experiment, always have reference with you. Sometimes, you know, doing a little bit of a live drawing, reference drawing of a real photography, or just some random item in your house, just take a picture, try to draw it. That really helps. Sketching stuff as much as you can. So another thing I used to do, I think I talked about this before, in case some of you guys haven't heard of it, I used to draw on the train on commute, and I would spend that time sketching. And once I get home, so that's 3 hours of sketching around. And once I get home, I would be doing digital art. So I would sketch by day and digital art by night. And that is also the reason why I was late all the time to class. Something that you should not do, but I'm the type of person, sadly, I'm not very punctual. Do not learn after me. It's not good to not be punctual. Despite me being not punctual, I would always finish my work because I know that I need to do my work to graduate, so I did that. So yeah, I was pretty much drawing most of the day, sleeping late at night because I was drawing digital stuff. Yeah, because I still wanted time to do my personal stuff, so I would do that. Luckily, my teachers were very, very, very accepting of me being tardy. I think I had to talk to the teacher about my tardiness because it was getting ridiculous at one point. I talked to my teacher, and the only reason they let me go because I always did my work. So yeah, not good to be tardy. But anyways, let's keep going with the face. With the face, I usually like to go with a combination of airbrush and solid round brush. Whatever I feel like, pretty much. And you can often play around with the hardness setting. 0 being airbrush, 100 being hard brush. And you can go somewhere in between as well if you feel like it. I'm just kind of going back to before to see how I drew the face, even though it's really not that expressive. I think I gave her red lips. Like that. Okay. I'm kind of going everywhere. I kind of want to work on the hips a little. Same with the hips. Give a bit of that indent feeling. Indented or squeezed by the clothing feeling. And then blend out the piece of clothing and work briefly on the stocking or the fishnet stocking. Oh, another thing with Photoshop is when you're selecting, you have to have anti-alias on with 0.7 pixel feather. That allows you to not have these jagged areas when you select stuff. As you can see, that is jagged. That is done without that setting. So once you have that on, when you select and paint it on, it should be a lot smoother. That's what we want when we use the lasso tool. Sometimes I forget and the edges will turn out really jagged. So I'm going to go into multiply and add that in. Deselect. Okay, see what else we can work on. Now I'm going to select this part right here and I'm going to briefly add highlight to this arm. The reason why I put highlight here instead of shadow, because back then I would probably put shadow here, but I'm putting highlight here because the reason being this arm is in the back, catching some of that lighting that's coming over here, as demonstrated by this arm having a bit of that. So if you paint it like this, it will feel like first the rib cage here will pop out, definitely. If that is something what you want, is to accentuate the silhouette, something to consider adding highlight here. Only if it works though, only if it's logical and if you have some highlight coming from that area. So that is the reason why I have it there. Purely to accentuate and to pretty much to go with the flow of the rest of the character. Always think about that. I'm just going to shadow, I mean shade the corner, the around the hip. Just make that a darker color, and we can also do this to the arm. Make the arm lighter. Go. There we go. Okay, I think it's looking not too bad now. And of course, a lot of the times I play around with stuff to see if it works or not. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So a lot of these stuff that I just did, I kind of like I felt like my current shading was boring, so I tried different things, and then I found that, oh hey, that looks interesting, so I kept it. And at the same time, I'm thinking, okay, why does this look good? Okay, because you know the lighting could be coming from here and stuff like that, so you have to think about all that. So I'm just selecting this area because I want to see if it would look good if I put it in highlight. So if I zoom out, take a look at the feel of this. Okay, it's looking not too bad, not too bad. Okay. Once I'm relatively satisfied with this, I'll move forward. But for now, copy paste. I'm copying the chest area because I want to see if I can push it a little lighter. Because originally I had it quite bright, and then I kind of lowered it down. So now let's see. Okay, I think that doesn't look too bad. Let's merge it down now. And as you can see, the colors here is a little bit different from the rest of her body. Let me just see if I can change that. Add a bit more contrast to the chest area and to the shoulder area, since it feels like it's connected, or not. Sometimes it's just like to try different stuff out. So that's something that I still do, and I do a bit more now compared to before. And you know, the more you experiment, the better you get at something. Okay, I think that should do for step 5. I was on this for quite a bit. Let's move on. Okay. Alright, now we're going to kind of slowly work on the rest of her as well. So let's work on the belt and the legs this time. And once again, I'm gonna lower the opacity of my lines to slowly decrease it from side. And then eventually it'll become a painting 100% without lines and stuff. So let's get started. I like to use the solid round brush just to kind of dish out the basic color for it, and then we go into a darker shade to add those shadow to it. And my workflow nowadays compared to back then is definitely different. It took me quite a bit of time to figure out this workflow, actually, probably years after. Don't think I've gotten to this level until you know what, until I started Patreon. My style was quite different, and a lot of the workflow that exists now was different as well, purely because I didn't have this much time, or spend this much time, actually I should say spend this much time experimenting with stuff. And a lot of times I depend on you guys to see if I'm going the right direction. Even right now I'm trying to figure out how I should improve, because I didn't want to really stick with one thing and just leave it at that. Despite it looking like I'm not really trying different stuff, I am trying slowly different ways, because I feel like I've been through so many ways of painting, at least without copying other people. I'm trying to experiment blindly, as in not really having outside influence apart from photographs, trying to imitate real life but still maintaining a semi-realistic proportion wise. But yeah, that's something that I do now more than I did before, really just thinking on it. Also, I guess it's kind of obvious, but another way to improve is really use your brain. I know it's weird, but I feel like drawing uses quite a bit of brain power, because a lot of times you have to figure out where that lighting is going. How can I paint that lighting in a way that looks good? Because there's ways of doing what I'm doing right now in a way that probably won't be as appealing in my taste, at least. So yeah, a lot of experimenting, a lot of think about it when you do stuff. Always think. Okay, let me just darken this part up a bit using the airbrush. And now I'm gonna work on the leg. So I'm gonna select this part right here where I want the leg to be fluffed up. When I say fluff up, sorry for all my random terminology, it's just to add a bit of shadow to where clothing is really tight on the skin, just to make it feel like, you know, it's tight on the skin. And as you can see, kind of over select this, so I'm gonna have to paint back this. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is select this leg now, and gonna put that highlight there, because as you can see, the highlight here should be some highlight there. So put that highlight there, put a bit more shadow here. So now it feels like this leg is really in front, really in front, which is what we want. Okay, now let's see what we could do. Now I'm gonna work on the face most likely, and to be honest, I feel like this part needs to be a lot bigger for me to work on the face. The reason being is you can't really work on the face if the canvas is too small. If you feel the need to zoom in to work on the face, it means that you need to resize your image to be much bigger. Something that I never did back then was to resize the image. I always tended to zoom in at over 100%. If you have to do that, it's not gonna be pretty, because you're basically compromising the quality of your work by zooming in to not its real size. So your piece will be a lot more pixelated if you do that. I mean, not pixelated, but you won't be able to work as well, I find. So anyways, the point is to always zoom in. I mean, to always resize your image to a larger size if you feel the need to zoom in. And it's just going to color the face. Her face is quite round and void of definition at the moment. So we have to try to see if we can add a bit of that definition back, even though her face is quite definitionless. I mean, definitionless. Okay, I'll try my best though. Let's see. Trying to refer back to my old style. Like that. And oftentimes I really don't work on the face that much. when I'm doing this, I only work on the face after I merge everything together and I'm able to change the jawline effectively without worrying about the lines. But anyways, we'll just do a quick little thing with the face here. Alright guys, what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to merge everything together, so now it's one single layer. I feel like at this point I'm gonna merge stuff together and I'm really gonna get in there and start fixing stuff. The first thing I'm gonna do is just to flip it over. Once you flip it over, you'll be able to see if you done anything weird, if you made any mistakes. For me, I feel like probably messed up the chest area a little. What I'm gonna do is remove the highlight in there, fix the shading, make it a bit softer, make it sort of like this. Also, I think this chest needs to be a bit lower, so I'm just going to lower that. There we go. And then paint over it. Okay, I still think it looks weird, to be honest. Let's merge it down, and what I'm gonna do is select it, go to liquify, and then play around with it a little, just to kind of make sure it looks even. Make sure it looks even, which is kind of difficult right now. Probably fix a bit of the anatomy too. Sometimes you won't really notice until nearing the end stages where you start fixing stuff. I also think her head is a bit too big, but you know, you could have a character with a bigger head if you want. That usually depends what type of style you're going for, and that's perfectly fine. What I'm gonna do to resize the head, just to select the head and kind of just resize it real fast, like that, and it's resized. And then of course we have to clean that up later, but for now it looks okay. Let me just rotate this real fast just to see how it looks. Maybe make the waist a bit shorter too. So a lot of correcting in terms of anatomy. Usually I go into this in more detail afterwards. As compared to this, I pretty much just did the line art, colored in, that was it. That's something I do more nowadays. It's just to really think about it, think about the anatomy, think about if it looks weird. You know, sometimes I make mistakes. I make quite a bit of anatomy mistake. A lot of my stuff is a little bit iffy here and there. I also miss quite a bit of stuff because you know, you can also overthink things, and that is one of my problems. I think I overthink things, I guess, and a lot of times I mess stuff up because I've been working on it for so long. And I think if I had to tell you guys something, it's just to you know, if you get frustrated at something, take a break, come back later, see if it really looks that bad the way it did when you were working on it. A lot of the times it won't be. A lot of the times it's just overthinking. But yeah, I do that quite a bit. Just going to define the neck bone a little. I actually feel like we could probably make the neck a little longer. Just gonna copy this just up the head a little. Maybe add a bit of that skin tone in here instead of highlight, I mean shadow. And then shade this part of the neck up. That. Alright. Okay, let's see. Let's work on the head a little now that we kind of extended the neck. Probably need to fix quite a bit of things. Let's work on the inside of the hair here. It's quite dark, so let's put a bit of shadow in here, a bit of highlight in here inside the shadow, just slightly. And what I'm gonna do is highlight the bang here so that we can effectively add the shadow on the other side. This. And just softly paint that in, reverse it, and paint it in this way. So a lot of times just select it one side and then after that revert it to work on the opposite side. Then adding a bit of detail. And gonna create some additional strands here. This is something that you can definitely work on after you merge everything together, but with lines it can be difficult. And just go ahead and refine that. So now we are sort of in the refining phase where I'm starting to really render out some of these areas. And first we're gonna work on the skin, then we're gonna work on the clothing a little bit more. So just using my solid round brush, I'm defining the arm a little bit better. Fixing this area, I'm actually not really sure. Maybe extending the shadow over here a bit. Adding a bit of highlight there. And adding some shadow here. Let's just kind of select this area only. Add that, then add a bit of shadow there. I'm trying to create the squish effect in clothing, so a lot of experimenting, a lot of adding shadow using the lasso tool. Usually it's quite fast, but we have to figure out if it works or not. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So now I really want to use a darker color to need to use a darker color to kind of emphasize the harshness, the contrast between the chest and the arm. The sharper the shadow, the more close they are, the more close they are to each other. So that is also something that you can keep in mind when you do this type of stuff. Okay, now I'm going to work on this right here. So I'm gonna copy, paste this selection, and just do this. And let me just kind of fix this area that's sticking out. So another thing that I think would be great is just to overall experiment with the tools that your software of choice have, whether that's Photoshop, OpenCanvas, Clip Art Studio, etc. For me, it is Photoshop, and I usually use these functions quite a bit, just to get used to them. The more used to them you get to them, the faster you will get to kind of just painting stuff out. and at some point it'll become natural to you, like breathing. I think for now what I'm gonna do is re-render this area a bit, because for me it's looking a little off. So what I'm trying to do is revamping the shading on the corset a bit. Now I'm gonna go over here, maybe add a bit of that, maybe add a little bit of highlight there to see if it works. Actually, I don't think it works too well, so I'm gonna stop that. So now I'm just going to kind of render out a bit of an anatomy trace of her belly here in the middle, for abs and rib cage, etc. over here, just to give it a little bit of that detail, but not too much because this is still a suit. And what I'm gonna do is just select this and paint that in. Maybe put a bit of shadow over here to give the impression of the bell casting a shadow on top of the belly or the waist. And I'm going to also clean this up and just put back whatever was painted over during that last step there. So always have to put back, edit, put back whatever we kind of painted over. So it's a constant step of painting over, editing, etc. until you're satisfied with the results. You know, oftentimes I still have problems with it, so I keep working at it, and that's how you overwork things. But anyways, let's go ahead and add the strap back because her top had a strap, so we're gonna add it back. Sometimes I laugh at the way I say things. Okay, so now that is back. Her top also have this design here. Like that. So we're gonna just put it there because I want to be slightly true to the original design. And also it has lines such as this. So just put that there, and it has a line in the middle too, like that. Okay, so now that we have that, I feel like you could probably paint the inside a little better now that we have the lines. Sometimes textures in clothing can help us visualize different forms, because the lines itself acts as a guide, and in this case I feel that is true. So now that we have the textured lines, we can kind of go ahead and work on the other stuff in a bit more detail. Oh my god, can you see this? It's a mess. So we need to fix this up. Let's just use the solid round brush real fast to kind of fix the shape. So right now I'm not really talking too much about how to improve as an artist, because I pretty much told you guys all there is to it earlier on. But hey, the most important thing, everybody knows this, is just to practice with reference. If you can do that, then you are on your way, And of course, never lose motivation, because motivation is also that thing that artists really need if they want to improve. If you don't have motivation, no drive, then you have no desire to improve. So get hyped, get your motivation up. Tell yourself that you can do it if you practice. Spend the time on it and you'll get there. Let me just zoom out a little. Okay, I guess it's not too bad, but I kind of want to make the legs a little longer and the hands a little shorter. I want to make her a bit taller and slimmer. Maybe like that. So I briefly changed it a bit. Let's see if this works okay. There we go. Okay. I mean, this is pretty much it. I need to fix the leg, but now I need to fix how the leg looks over here, because I kind of tweaked it with the liquify tool, so now I have to fix it back. So a lot of this is back and forth. Yeah, or until you feel like it's looking nice. So this kind of lighting is a little bit more adventurous to me compared to this. This one is a bit more simple and a bit more systematic. And I feel like I should probably try to exploit this a bit more, but I just can't help it. I need to start painting outside of the lines, pretty much. But we'll try to do as much as we can. So now I'm going to close that up. Go into darken. I'm going to darken up some of these areas. And perhaps even add some darkness using the multiply tool, like so. And maybe even on the hair a bit. And then what we're gonna do is go back to normal, add back a bit of highlight using a blue hue to signify another light source, which is the background light source, which is blue, cold light source. And we're just gonna graze that around the silhouette to make it feel a bit more blended into the background. This part too. Do a little rim light of the blue. And the leg too, like so. So as you can see, it's starting to look a little bit more part of the background. Just like be a bit more subtle if I can. And I'm going to add a bit of that skin tone in here because we're gonna still do the fishnet look. I want to be as truthful to my original character as I can. And over here I find it a little crooked, so I'm gonna copy, paste, and Control T, free transformation. I want to round this up a little more, like that. And then I'm going to blur this in to clean it up. Of course, there are some parts here that you have to do it manually, but that's fine, we can totally do that. Go back in with your solid round brush and blend that in. And I'm going to put this part in shadow here because I'm gonna make sure that the hips really stand out. You can also use this tactic to kind of make certain parts stand out, put certain part in shadow, and make certain parts stand out by making it a bit brighter than the other bits. In this case, it is the arm versus the leg here. And of course, gonna blend that in. And a lot of this you can definitely refine a lot better by spending more time on it. Let me just put this in highlight a bit more. There we go. Just to really emphasize them hips. Nowadays all my female characters are about, I really focus on the hips. Hips are something I really like to paint. It's something really fun to paint. I think it's the face, the hips, and the chest, for me at least, the most fun to paint on female characters. For guys, I think it's the face, the abs, and the clothing on the dudes. Because usually for my guy characters, I usually try to make their clothes really stand out and sexy looking. Usually for guys, I like to give a bit of make it slightly revealing without being too revealing. Anyways, and for girls, yes, for girls it's all about that reveal. It's just how I prefer it, I guess. Because girls have so much more anatomical landmarks to show off than male characters, I would say. So oftentimes it's a lot more fun to show skin on girls because they have so many more, such as the chest, the waist, the legs. Oftentimes, you know, girls can have long hair, and the hair part is also quite fun to do. For male characters, oftentimes the ones that I like tend to have medium hair to short hair. There's maybe one or two male characters with long hair that I like, and that's pretty much the reason. It's nothing other. It's not that deep. Okay, so now we have sort of refined it a bit more, poofed out the legs a bit more, we kind of remove some of the shadow, and the highlight. We should probably make it a bit more intense, but for now I prefer a bit more subtle in these things. So I really need to make this part a bit more like that, a bit more curve in terms of shadow. Really have to hug that curve there, and then I'm gonna select around it and attempt to add a very intense shadow there, like this. A much darker, much contrast shadow there. There we go. Okay, so that's number 5. And number 6, I'm gonna attempt to finish it off by working on the head and the stocking. So this is a fairly simple design of my previous OC. A lot of the times I would probably spice it up with a bunch of other details, but we'll keep it true to character and simple. Now I'm just gonna work on the hair, add a bit of that cold tone in there, just to balance it out. And also here on the face, we are going to add that blue tone. I just use the airbrush here. I'm using the airbrush to help me with kind of keeping things clean, and by keeping things clean is that means it's overly soft. So after that, we have to go back and fix that problem by bringing back some of that definition of the character. Go with the nose, add these shadows here. So the face is one of the more difficult things to do, for me at least. Still, I thought I was past this phase, but I guess not. And then go for the chin, the poofy lips, add a bit of highlight up here and here. And then finish the eyes area. There we go. I don't know if this is looking too good, but I can't zoom in even though I want to zoom in. If I zoom in again, it's gonna be... I guess I could actually. I might make this character a bit bigger so we can have more room to play around with, especially for the face. The face requires fairly big canvas to work on just because of the amount of detail in such a small space. So we might have to zoom in again. Go. She was blushing in my other one, in my original concept. But anyways, let's kind of make this a little bigger. So this is kind of like, you know, those Russian dolls where it's like the small ones inside the bigger ones. This is exactly it, except it's the other way around. Okay, now we have some room to play around with. And here too. It's a little bit painterly, I find, but it should be fine. Now I'm going to rotate it just to have a feel of how it looks the other side so that it doesn't look too weird. Let's move her down a little. Feels like it needs to be tilted a little bit this way, like that. So let's do that. And that is using the Ctrl-T transform, free transformation. Click on your little tablet pen button and then warp. Or you can access it here, warp. Okay, now that that's done, confirm that. And we'll kind of also play around with this a little too. Like that. Okay, so this seems like it's getting there. It's definitely getting there. Let's start by adding some intense highlight onto the face. Actually, let's try something else. So we have this really intense highlight on the chest. So what we're gonna do is have the face mostly in shadow and just a little bit of the face in highlight, just to go with what we have going on with the lighting in general. And that way it's gonna give a nice feel. There we go. I'm probably gonna have a very slight highlight over here. Just a little bit. Just to go with the general theme of things. And maybe a little bit of highlight on this strand of hair. Have some underneath here. And this tuft of hair too. Like that. And let's bring back the darkness in this eye because it was getting lost. So a lot of the times you have to go back and put those details back. And then fix the neck area. Fix the hair. Go, zoom out, let's see how it looks. Okay, whoops, I zoomed in a bit too much. Okay, now what we're gonna do is select the chin, brighter underneath the chin, just to get that lighting going on. I think the lips needs to be way bigger. That. There we go. And then probably a little bit of highlight over here. Just to add some definition on this side. And probably extending this highlight a bit onto the chin itself. I don't know, it's looking a little muddy. I need to fix this. Sometimes you try things, sometimes it doesn't work out. Gotta figure out ways to make it not look as muddy as it does. Let's add a bit of highlight down to the chin. Properly define the lips and the nose here. Looks like a little cat nose. Get that shadow going. And then the nostrils. And then we're going to flip it over again. So it's a lot of back and forth like this. Okay, so let's keep going. Work on the face. The face is one of the toughest things to work on, so I think I keep saying it, but I always try to leave it till the last possible moment to work on it. That way I can work on the general feel of the whole character without worrying too much about the face, and then I can worry about it after I finish the whole character's body. That way I don't have to be wasting too much time before working on most of the character. Anyways, if only you guys know how much time I spend on the face. Sometimes it's pretty ridiculous. But then again, face is one of those things that even though I work on it every time I work on it so much, I'm still having trouble with it. It's just, sometimes it's a hit and miss. Sometimes I get the face off the bat. Sometimes I spend a few extra hours to make sure the face is looking the way I want it to look. But anyways, now that I have the face sort of done-ish, let's work on the hair. So using the solid round brush, gonna start painting patches of it. Like that. Maybe we can have a bit of hair on her shoulder at some point, but for now, just do this. And also, I isolated this area so I can properly work on this part of her hair. and I want to section it out into little batches. That is also something that I do more now. Days back then, I find for hair, I just straight up, because I knew that what hair texture was like, so I pretty much just did strands after strands after strands, as you can see, like that. But I learned now that you have to kind of clump it up, do batches of hair, and then add the strand detail, the hair detail. That way it feels more realistic. So yeah, that is some certain stuff that I see now in a different light compared to I did previously. And a lot of the times it's thanks to experimenting, practicing. I mean, I can't say that enough. Pretty much in this whole tutorial, those two are the main tips. Any artist will tell you this. You ask them, how do you improve? That's what they'll say, in practice. Of course, it's up to you on how you want to practice. There's so many ways of approaching it. Everybody have a different way. I'm just sharing with you guys my experience. And you know what? Once you get into the workforce, once you get into college, you'll see a pretty big difference between how you practice. And I find that having peer pressure can be good, because sometimes you can see how they do things, how they draw things, and you can take away from it how you will. So I'll try to think of it in a positive light, despite I'm pretty sure there'll be drama, but try to see it in a positive light. And help everybody out, stuff like that. Anyways, I think the hair is coming along, not too bad. The only thing is the face. I still have a problem with this face. Still not looking as well as I would like it to. Let me just fix the lips here. And there we go. I guess the face will have to be a little bit iffy, I guess the word should be, because the face is gonna take me a bit longer, much longer. I can immediately tell if the face is gonna take me longer, because it just doesn't look right. And usually I would just spend hours on the face, just trying to make sure it looks right. Faces are one of my weaknesses, I find. It really depends. Sometimes, I hit the mark, sometimes I don't. It's all about, I want to say skill, but it's all about luck for me, at least. There you go. And of course her eyes are blue. I totally forgot that. Gotta make sure the eyes are nice and blue. And of course gotta make sure the whites of the eyes is visible enough for you guys to see. There we go. And let me kind of outline this slightly with a white color, just to signify. And let me just curve this out just a tad more, just to signify, just to make the silhouette actually stand out a bit more. Oftentimes you can use a whitish rim light. That doesn't mean it goes on completely white, just very softly graze the outline with a white shade, a white color, like this. this is before and after, even though the face not loving too much. I'll probably fix a bit of it off camera because, you know, I'm probably just gonna be sitting here talking about how bad the face is and how I wanna fix the face. Let's see what we could do. Maybe I can add a little bit of color here. I mean, highlight here to intensify it. Oh, sorry. And a bit of shadow here. Look how still keeping it sort of 3D, but not really. Just going to blur the eyes here a little. There's so many ways of doing the eyes, but for now we're just gonna do that and add a dot of highlight in there. And then add a bit of that lighting on the side, the face. Like that. And probably work on the ears now because I haven't been really working on the ears. Let's see how it used to look. So it's kind of pointy. So let's get started with lassoing this part. This part's gonna be fairly dark. It's like a fox tip. Let's go have a look. See? Okay, so it's completely dark. And then the inside is pinkish. So we're gonna inverse it so everything else is selected except for this part that's selected. Except for this part. I'm sorry for confusing you guys. Sometimes my English can be quite random sometimes. When I am super focused, certain stuff I describe doesn't really have the same meaning as I meant it. So yeah. Anyways, let's just fluff this out, sticking with the original design here. Oh, I know! She looks like a cougar. Those look like cougar ears or lynx. And then of course, using the lasso tool, I'm gonna kind of do some random little selections to give it texture. And to clean up the shape of it, pretty much. And you know, sometimes what you could do with the face is select one of your older faces and then slowly overlay it on top of your new faces. Sometimes, you know, it gives a nice feel, only sometimes. Then erase the part that you don't like. There we go. Alright guys, so that, I don't know if I should keep working on this. I want to keep working on it for just a bit longer. Let me just create another layer and I'm gonna quickly work on the suit a bit, since I feel like it has some issues here and there. The main issue I have is the belt area is somewhat clinging onto her body in a weird manner. So I'm just going to lower this and have it a little bit more curved on her body instead of in a weird shape. So this is before, after. So as you can see, I want to bulk up her waist, or at least make it a little rounder. And then going back with the airbrush to put back some of those details. And then of course gotta put back those lines that we started out with. And maybe if we want to make this into a fairly different texture, we can see if we can make it a little shiny by adding just a slight bit of texture or shine to it. A bit here, usually a bit more highlight closer to the line itself. Just outline that. There we go. Here and there. Okay, so now it's a little bit outlined. Let's go back to the original. So I had like somewhat of a design going on around. We can definitely do that. It just kind of make it not as shiny, I guess. And then we are going to go ahead and merge this down, and we are going to do the design. So what I'm gonna do is select this area. I would like to infuse a bit of skin tone around that area to make it seem a little transparent. Like that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it looks weird. Hopefully in this case it doesn't look too weird. Add a bit of that skin tone in there. And remove it. Merge it down. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna see if I can kind of get another color for this. Maybe something not like this green. So I'm gonna see it here. Okay, let's zoom out so you guys can also see. Let's see here. Damn, that is really green. Maybe this color? I kind of like this color, it's pretty. And then perhaps a bit like this. Definitely looks very pretty. Let's see if we can just color this up. Yep, that's pretty nice. Okay, let's see. Just kind of looking back and forth to see if I'm kind of sticking to the original design. And last but not least, gotta have those green hair ribbons. There we go. And of course, it still has the little details on the bust area. So kind of like random scribbled designs. Oh man, my design aesthetic back then was interesting to say the least. Okay, let's just merge that in. And perhaps we can go for a little necklace, a little choker necklace. I always like to put somewhat of a neck accessory. I like drawing chokers on female character. I just think it adds a nice little touch that is a little sexy and cute. So let's put that in there. So that's before and after. Okay, you know what I sort of like? I kind of like the shading for this. Actually, I think the shading for this is a little bit needs more shading is what I think. Sometimes certain stuff I just feel like it needs more shading, so I'm gonna give it more shading. So select the areas I want it darker, and I'm going to go here, darken it up, lock that in. I'm gonna put some skin tone in the shadow here. The reason being is I want to kind of integrate the shadow a bit better, and usually a way to do that is just to include a bit of its surrounding color into it, hence the skin tone. And then this, I suppose. See if we can kind of make it light like this, and then shade it up. Wow, okay. Ah, okay, actually that doesn't look too bad. Let's make it not as obvious though. You know, I have the urge to kind of switch up the design a little, just because I don't know, I just maybe I'll try to change this area up a little. So I made a separate layer, and I'm going to darken this area up so that it feels like actually nope, that doesn't look that good. Okay. Maybe a bit of what's it called? A bit of corset design would feel better, because honestly I'm not really liking this basic swimsuit looking one piece here. Not really feeling it. So let me just try to switch up the design a little. Oftentimes I do this. If I feel like something isn't working, I'm gonna try to see if I can do certain things. So let's just add a revealing window here, and then we are going to line this up a little like that, and then to have the lace here. Yeah, I think this looks a little bit more design wise a little bit more interesting. Always try to find interesting design elements. Okay, so now we can kind of highlight it slightly by just adding very basic green highlight that I already have out there, and then of course we could go in with a small brush and add those secondary little details, such as this little detail. Again, just very lightly with the solid round brush, nothing too detailed. And then kind of define the lines here a little, texturize it a little. I honestly I'm trying to hold back from doing a corset. This is a one-piece suit, let's just stick with that, but damn, I'm like trying to hold back, because usually you guys know I like to do two-piece lingeries are my favorites, not the one-piece ones. Oh well. So right now I am just selecting these little windows created by the lace, and what we're gonna do is Control H to hide the selection and kind of add a bit of shadow underneath each one. That is to create somewhat of a overlay effect of the lace onto the skin to make it feel a little bit more integrated. Pop that highlight in there just a tad. There we go. Okay, so we have that going for us. And let's see what else we can do. Over here needs a bit of fixing up and refining. So let me just do that real fast. There we go. I still need to line this area here. What else can I do? Let's see. Let's kind of add a bit more definition to this buckle right here. It's kind of getting neglected. So with metal buckles, usually the silver ones, I like to start off with a white base, as I've done, and then silver. Dark blue, and then just keep on stacking. Keep stacking those shadows. So once you have the shadows, now you go back in to add the highlight. Highlight using a very, very small, comparable to the larger brush that you used before, just the small ones to add that nice thin highlight to make the illusion. Give the illusion of shiny parts pretty much. And right now you're seeing this, you're like, oh, it doesn't look that shiny. But if you zoom out, you can kind of see that the texture is definitely there. And of course, you can definitely refine this further if you want to. For now, let me just do these little... Oh my god, it looks so tacky. I'm not really liking this, but oh well. And of course, I believe she has a tail, but... Oh, I totally forgot her fishnet. The fishnet pattern. Okay, you know what? I will be back. I'm gonna grab a texture and then we'll shove it in there. Alright guys, I found the texture. So we have this texture right here. What we want is this part right here. Gotta get that nice texture for the stocking. And lower the opacity and then lay that there. Trying to line that up as much as you can using the warp option in Ctrl-T free transformation area. So we're just gonna line that up as much as we can. There we go. And see if we can increase the opacity, how it will look. Okay, it doesn't look too bad. It looks okay. And probably need to kind of darken this up, so brightness, contrast, darken that up. Duplicate. Let's flip it over to the other leg. The other leg is in another direction, so we have to once again use the warp tool to kind of warp it to fit the other leg. Like these. And probably need to erase parts of the top area. So we're going to merge both of them together and then erase the bits that we don't need. So there we have it. And that is a way to use texture. And if you don't want to use that much texture, you can lower the opacity just to have a little bit of that fishnet feel, but not too much. So yeah. And one more thing, I think I need to have a bit more shadow over here, just to make sure this thing stands out. And I'm also going to create a darker area for that specific area. I want the intense shadow. I'm gonna lower the saturation for this. So to create a darker shadow and to increase the contrast, and I'm going to kind of zoom out to check it out. So as you can see a bit of that definition going on with that, and that is what we want. Okay, now we're going to merge everything down now. I think I've been working on this for a while, so now we're gonna just edit one last time. Okay, go to auto contrast if you can. It did. And I'm going to kind of decrease the opacity a little because I think it's a bit too much. We're going to duplicate this once again, merge it down, go to filter, blur, gloss blur. I know it's a lot of steps. Blur this a little, decrease the opacity, put it on soft light, go into adjustment, hue saturation, because we want this to be not as bright, not too bright. I mean, not too saturated. So yeah. So if you put this in normal, it looks all grayed out, which is what we want, because grayed out colors look good in soft light when you layer on top of another color. Okay, so that's what we have, and you know what, you can still like play around with it a little if you want, change the color, change the highlight, etc, etc. So there you have it, guys. I might make this a little fancier off camera, but yeah, this is the gist of this demo guide and voiceover guide, I guess. Even though I didn't really have that much to say about improving as an artist, just have certain experiences that I was telling you guys about. Anyways, just last thing, just going to graze the outside with a bit of blue, and that'll be it. That'll be it. Thank you guys for listening. I hope this has given you guys some motivation and direction to how you can pursue your passion. Hopefully it was helpful. It was kind of fun for me because, you know, I've seen a lot of artists do this challenge where they take one of their older pieces and making an updated take on it, and I haven't really done this, so this is the opportunity for me to do that for you guys, or do that for myself, and make a fun tutorial out of it and a voiceover guide. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I'll see you guys in the next voiceover tutorial. And again, if you have any suggestions, let me know. Send me a message, comment on my Patreon, anywhere. So yeah, I will see you guys soon, and take care, guys. I hope you guys have a great day.